There are certain games that don't just entertain us, they stick with us long after we put down the controller. They leave us thinking and remembering, even feeling like we were part of the world that once existed. And in 2010, Rockstar Games delivered one of those experiences. They gave us a game that didn't just bring the Wild West to life, it told a story that was both brutal and deeply human. That game was Rockstar's Red Dead Redemption. Now, before Arthur Morgan's tragic story in RDR2, there was John Marston, a gunslinger trying to escape his past and protect his family. His tale was one of revenge, loyalty, and ultimately sacrifice. But how did this game come to be? Why did Rockstar, known for creating the chaos of Grand Theft Auto, decide to slow things down and take us to the dusty plains of the dying frontier? And what makes Red Dead Redemption's story stand as one of the greatest in all of gaming? Today, we're going to take a deep dive into how Red Dead Redemption came to be, what it's all about, and walking through the story beginning to end. By the time we're done, you'll have a complete picture of why this game still holds such a legendary place in video game history. To really appreciate Red Dead Redemption, we need to go back a few years before John Marston ever picked up a revolver. The story begins with a lesser known title, Red Dead Revolver. Released in 2004, it was originally a Capcom project, more of a linear arcade style shooter set in the Wild West. Rockstar San Diego eventually picked up the rights and finished the game, while Revolver had some charm. It wasn't the biggest hit for Rockstar, but it did plant a seed, a vision of what open world Western could be. Rockstar saw potential. They had already mastered modern cities with Grand Theft. But what if they could take that formula of freedom, choice, and immersion and set it against the backdrop of the American frontier, a place filled with danger, lawlessness, and clashes between old and new ways of life? That vision became the foundation of Red Dead Redemption. Development began in the mid 2000s, and it wasn't an easy ride. Rockstar poured years into building the technology, creating vast open landscapes, and developing a world that felt alive. They wanted every ranch, every saloon, and even dusty roads to feel like it belonged to the living. They took inspiration from class Western films, Clint Eastwood's The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, The Wild Bunch, and even Westerns like Unforgiven. The goal wasn't just to make a Western game, it was to capture the feeling of living in the past. And of course, at the heart of it all was the story. Rockstar didn't just want cowboys shooting guns, they wanted characters with depth. They wanted to explore themes of redemption, morality, and the end of an era. John Marston wasn't a simple hero or villain. He was a man caught between his violent past and his desperate need to protect his family. Finally, after years of development, Red Dead Redemption was released in May of 2010 for the PS3 and the Xbox 360. The game was an immediate success. Critics praised its world building, stories, and mechanics, and won numerous Game of the Year awards and sold millions of copies. Players weren't just impressed, they were moved. They felt like they were living in the last days of the Wild West, and more than a decade later, people are still talking about it. Before diving into the story, let's talk a little about how the game plays. Red Dead Redemption is at its core an open world action adventure shooter. But unlike GTA's chaotic cities, here you're riding on horseback across sprawling deserts, mountains, and plains. The pace is slower, deliberate, and until the guns come out. You can hunt wildlife, play poker, herd cattle, or even duel in the street. The world is filled with strangers who need help, ambushes waiting on the roadside, and random encounters that make every ride unpredictable. The game also introduced the honor system, a morality mechanic that shaped how people treated you. Play as a noble gunslinger, and townsfolk will greet you with respect. Become an outlaw, and you'll see bounty hunters chasing you down. It added layers of roleplay that made your choices matter. Of course, combat was central, and Rockstar nailed it with the dead-eye targeting system, the slow-motion technique. Now you mark enemies and fire off deadly barrages, making you feel like a true Western gunslinger. Combined with cover-based shooting and authentic weaponry, it gave firefights a cinematic flair. But what really held it all together was the narrative, and that's what we're going to explore now. Full story of John Marston. Story begins in 1911. The Old West is dying. Railroads and government control are spreading across the frontier, and the outlaws are becoming relics of the past. John Marston, a former outlaw, is forced into a deal with government agents Edgar Ross and Archer Foreman. They've taken his wife, Abigail, and his son, John, hostage. If John ever wants to see his family again, he must hunt down his former gang members, men he once rode with, men he once called family. John's first target is Bill Williamson, holed up in Fort Mercer, but things don't go as planned. John tries to confront Bill peacefully, only to be shot and left for dead. Bonnie McFarley saves him. She's a rancher. She introduces him to life, teaches him the value of hard work and community. Through Bonnie and others, we see a different side of John. Not just a killer, but a man trying to do right. Over time, John helps U.S. Marshal Johnson to deal with outlaws and corruption. He forms connections, earns trust, and gathers allies. Eventually, they storm Fort Mercer together, only to discover that Williamson had fled south into Mexico. In Mexico, the story takes on new layers. John finds himself caught between two sides of a revolution, Colonel Aladdin's corrupt government and Abraham Reyes' rebels. Neither side is truly noble, but John is forced to navigate both in his quest to find Williamson. Along the way, he meets colorful characters like Nigel West Dickens and the dangerous revolutionary Luisa Frontera. Mexico is where the game really takes John's morality, forcing him to work with liars, murderers, and opportunists just to get closer to his goal. Eventually, John tracks down Williamson and another former gang member, Javier Escuelo. One is killed, the other captured, but John's task isn't over yet. The government agents reveal he must also deal with Dutch Vanderlyn, his old mentor and leader of the gang. This is where the story becomes deeply personal. Dutch was more than just an outlaw, he was family to John, but Dutch has changed. He's now leading a gang of disenfranchised Native Americans claiming to fight against the government, but in reality using them for his own selfish ends. John is torn between reality and duty, but he knows he must stop Dutch. After a long pursuit, Dutch meets his end, but not at John's hand. Instead, Dutch accepts that the world has no place for him anymore, choosing to leap off a cliff rather than be captured. Coward. With Dutch gone, John believes his ordeal is over, and at first, it seems like it is. The government releases Abigail and Jack, and John returns home to rebuild his ranch and live in peace. These moments are some of the most heartfelt in the game. John teaches his kid how to hunt and fish, helping Abigail, and finally being the family man he's always wanted to be. But peace does not last. As we all know, Edgar Ross, the government agent, betrays John. Soldiers surround the ranch. John realizes what's about to happen, and one of the most powerful scenes in gaming, John sends Abigail and Jack away, then steps out of the barn to face his fate. Surrounded by soldiers, he draws his gun one last time. John Marston dies in a hail of bullets, sacrificing himself so that his family can live. The game doesn't end there though. Years later, you play as Jack Marston, now grown after his mother dies. He then tracks down Edgar Ross, the man responsible for his father's death, and kills him in a duel. The cycle of violence continues, and the question of redemption lingers. Red Dead Redemption was not just another open world game. It was a landmark in storytelling. It showed us that video games could explore themes of morality, sacrifice, and family with the same depth as film and literature. John Marston wasn't perfect, but he was real. He was a man trying to right his wrongs in a world that no longer had a place for him. The game paved the way for Red Dead Redemption 2, which expanded the story even further, giving us the tragic prequel of Arthur Morgan and Dutch's gang. But even RDR2's brilliance, the original still holds a special place in players' hearts. It was the game that made us think and that made us realize the power of storytelling in gaming. So more than a decade later, Red Dead Redemption is still remembered not just for its gameplay, but for its soul. And my final thoughts in the game, the graphics for as old as it is, granted I'm on a 4090 and I have like a really great PC, I thought the game looked still good and better than some new games that are coming out today. The gunplay was great. The Deadeye mechanic is phenomenal. The story overall I thought was really good. Towards the end, I didn't realize you had to do so much at the end. I thought it was going to kind of end pretty quickly once Dutch died, but it just kind of kept going on for a little bit longer, so that was okay. It was kind of nice, playing like a Family Guy or whatever, teaching your kid, and it added a lot to the story, which made me, yeah, I kind of bugged me a little bit how they killed him off, but it's whatever. Um, as far as like RDR2 though, definitely I think it's better, way fucking longer, and it's nice to play this though and see what happened before to get John Marston into this position to begin with. But that's my final thoughts on it. If you enjoyed this deep dive into Red Dead Redemption, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe, and ring the bell for more in-depth explorations of gaming's greatest stories. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.